I am a curator with the Organization of Black Aesthetic and an assistant professor in Black Studies at Swarthmore College. And I am just honored to be able to talk to you about this really fascinating film. I was wondering if everybody could maybe give a short introduction about your name and involvement in the film. If we move on.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Jazmin, director, lead investigator. Very, very obviously a Gemini. So.
Hello, Blackstar. I'm glad to be back. My name is Deji. I'm the producer.
Hello. I'm Yelen, one of the DPs and editors.
Hey y'all, I'm Olivia. I'm co-investigator, researcher, collaborator.
I was wondering if maybe, since we're lucky enough to have you all here, maybe you could just give us an introduction to how you came to be involved in this project. What desires led you to it, or how you got roped into working on making this come to fruition?
Yeah. So, this is very much a family production. I'll let everybody speak to kind of their feelings on it being a family production. But, I was a filmmaker. This is my first feature film. This is now our 6th year of completing this, and we're still tinkering, going to release it in the fall. But Getty is also my mentor, and she is a Haitian filmmaker in her own right. Everybody, please watch her film, I Eating One More. And so, Getty trusted me as a young 20-something to be her second camera for her feature film, which was the first Haitian film to ever qualify for an Oscar.
And it won Best Narrative at Blackstar in 2016.
Let's go! So, as you can see, I am standing on the shoulder of giants. Getty really role modeled this kind of DIY approach to filmmaking where for her film we were in Haiti and we didn't have access to unions and a whole lot of gear, but she was really good at empowering different folks in the community, training them, and creating film that way. And so that was very much the model here. Getty is the producer. I reached out to Lydia 2 years into being in grant writing purgatory. And it was the summer that Olivia and Getty both came on the project where this came to fruition for real. So really big on collaboration in that regard. I don't think until I had this intergenerational team, people really understood the scope of what we were trying to do. And then Yelen stuck with me because they are my partner of 12 years. And they're also a self-reflexive filmmaker. And so we trade places where they shot and edited for me, and I also shoot and edit for them. And to really complicate the web of things, Yelen is also Getty's child. And so that means Getty is my mother-in-law. Our sound person was my brother-in-law.
I'm just the play cousin now. I'm not.
But Getty, I think it's most interesting hearing your relationship to the L'Esperances because also some of my entitlement with this project and the gumption that I had going into it was based on a point of relation. So do you want to fill in the lore of the L'Esperances?
The lore is that we're all related. All the L'Esperance are related. My mother's maiden name is L'Esperance, and so we're from the same sort of southeast region of Haiti. And so I have heard of the name Renée L'Esperance, but never equated it to Mavis Beacon until Jazmin told me about this project in 2018. I came on board in 2020, and we're right in the pandemic, and there's George Floyd, there's all kinds of fear of us being out in the streets as Black folks. And it's one thing that we did not want to do, and I think it was something that was a consensus, that although we were operating from a place of trauma, that we did not want to make a film that was traumatizing. And so that was, and so knowing that, I led with a lot of care as well, and I think the only way that you can make those kinds of films is actually mimicking a family. I didn't have to mimic because we are a family, but to really be in a space where people feel secure and they feel safe. And so that was my role really as being a producer, was making sure that everyone was good here in their soul and creatively as well. So.
I'm a top.
Yeah, no, that's true. How did I come onto the project?
Did you have a choice?
That's why I'm like,
I gave them an offer they couldn't refuse.
It was, I think quickly the project turned into this, it was this all-consuming thing. We were partially living at that studio headquarters, we were like breathing, like sleeping, consuming this film, and it was consuming us also. And so, obviously we lived together, and being able to wake up, roll out of bed, and just be shooting, I think made for this sort of intimacy that's present in the film. It gave way for that. I think I think for me it was how to keep this forever sort of loving gaze on the people in front of the camera, and I think both of y'all were really, it was just such a joy to, I think, capture y'all's synergy and chemistry, and how to, at the end of the film, y'all see like it just, the film gets closer and closer and closer, like it starts very wide and then it just zooms in, and I think it shows that we were all kind of like in this process together, I think.
And Elon also came in to like rescue and support. So like before we were formally funded by Neon, we were trying to work with different cinematographers, and like Elon saying, like you could tell from the footage that they didn't love us. And there was one scene where Olivia and I were having like an emotional interaction, and I knew going into it, I was like, I'm going to cry, because I always cry. And so I told the cinematographer, like, if I cry, let's make it great. Like, zoom in, make it work, let's do something with this like traumatic experience. And then it didn't happen that way. And like I saw the footage and it's like, wait, I bared my soul and you didn't get the focus right? Like, you're done. And so pretty much from that point on, it was like, if I'm gonna be trying to be this vulnerable with Olivia, and also like, I don't wanna be arguing about whether or not we should expose the sky or Olivia's face. It's like, it's always Olivia, it's always Olivia. And so there were just certain truisms about like actually respecting us if we were going to give our own images over in perpetuity. And I think until Yolanda joined the team, we were also really scared about how we were being represented.
It reminds me a little bit of like, this is literally a random reference. It's not actually a reference, but like, I don't know if you guys remember seeing like Irma that you can like tell that Oliver says that it was a time where like he really thought she was the most gorgeous woman in the world, filming her, and I feel like you really, there are parts of the film where you really feel like, oh, the cinematographer is actually like quite in love with these people. It's very tender. I got onto the project, it was I met Daz the summer after I graduated from high school, and it was kind of the first time I had heard about like the Mavis Beacon project was through a presentation that they had done at the School for Poetic Computation. And it was kind of, thinking about like Black people, old media, memories, and this very like poetic, wholesome kind of like nerdy way that I found like super engaging and then very magnetic. And so I was like, I want to be part of this project. I really do. And it wasn't until we were, it was the pandemic and we were stuck inside. that I got an amazing DM, and I was like, well, I have experience writing college scholarship applications. Surely writing grant pitches isn't that different, and it was similar enough. But I think the entire process was a series of yeses that I never would have expected myself to say yes to. I'm an artist and an archivist. It wasn't until this project that I ever saw myself as a filmmaker or someone who's interested in film or documentary in that way. And I feel like, I got exposed to an entire world of storytelling and myth making and truth finding in ways that combine them all really sweetly.
I also feel like that is all true, but also Olivia, from the telling of it, I feel like you always sound like someone's like, can I please join us? Like, no, Olivia was providing a theoretical baseline for this project to exist. So the phrases and the glossary that she was generating at 18 around terms like cyberdoula and data trauma, it's for me, as someone who was trying to make sense of this entire project, Olivia was, before anything, a source. And then, oh, will you be my friend on camera? But, it's not just, this 18-year-old graduated and wanted to join. It's no, I know you're brilliant. And I don't care that you're 19. Do you want to associate produce this? And clearly, she did a great job.
Well, I'm going to ask a question or two more, then I'll pass it over to the audience. So if you have any questions, please prepare. I think one of the things that, to connect to that question of the deep kind of source and citational practice, the kind of care that's happening here, is this kind of Black feminist ethics of recovery. I'm thinking of someone like Alice Walker, Search for a Mother's Gardens, looking for a mother who can maybe be entryway into a kind of ethics of care around the digital space, and Mavis Beacon maybe being the kind of projection to do that kind of work. But I'm thinking about something that Mandy Harris, I think it is, said about what is the epilogue to this, and I'm really interested about what lessons you've learned or taken from this kind of unrequited journey, this desire to find something. What does it give us around thinking about the ethics of consent that maybe has come for you after the making of the film, in the process of making the film that you learned from?
I think the biggest thing for me, it was understanding how powerful refusal really is. I feel like we kind of don't take as seriously the actual power that our refusal holds and the different machines that it can grind into a whole, and the ways in which it forces people to get creative in a way that they've never been asked to. I think for a lot of different systems, technological systems, political systems, ecological systems, we kind of are conditioned to understand reality in really specific ways and using really specific protocols of engaging with people that we're taught by whoever has been given the mic to teach stuff, which often is this hierarchical, super hegemonic power most of the time. But I think one of the things that Renée was quite heroic to me was in, that refusal was in the ability that she, very freely was just I'm not even gonna pick up the phone. In a way where I grew up in an internet where to access every service, it's kind of assumed that you will input your name into a form. It's expected that you will submit your information. It's expected that you, in order to apply for schools, in order to get access into any kind of system, we're expected to trade information about ourselves to that end. It kind of results in a stacking devaluation of that information about us when it's actually quite valuable and could be the source of films that travel. And so, like Sade says, you have to not be afraid to go away.
Yeah, I think it's very similar for me. My vocabulary is not as extensive as Olivia's, but in terms of just I think in my own terms, as a child, Mavis Beacon was a role model like, she made the digital space feel very comfortable. You know, it's like, oh, that's someone that looks like they could be my family, and when I go on the game, the hands look like they could be my hands, and this whole new internet thing that, like, we're all figuring out, like, it felt very safe. And so, like, I think she like, brought me into this world, and then in my adulthood, when it comes to, like, consent and your digital footprint, and the idea of abstaining and refusing, it's like, at this phase of my life, Renée, outside of the character of Mavis, represents a whole different type of role modeling to me. And I think that's almost like, I was like, I'm so glad Mavis brought me in, but I'm so glad Renée is like pulling me out too, in terms of like, you know, outside of just like what we could show in this film, there were people who are in private investigators for a living who like contacted us and were like, I did some digging on your behalf. And one of them, Roy, shout out to Roy, he was able to track down 4 out of 5 of the names of the other Mavis Beacons, which Olivia and I aren't planning to like make available to the public in an archive, but regardless of like whatever private tools he had and like ability to like scrub the dark web, he could not find Renée, and that's because she never participated in social media, so like he could not reverse image search her face. And it is the AI and technology that at the time she chose not to participate did not even exist. And so in that way, I'm like, her intuition is on point. Her role modeling actually in her own body is so much more significant than the role modeling of her as Mavis. And yeah, in that way too, like, you know, I'm really excited to sit with Olivia and like contact data brokers and to remember that like I actually, like, I think I operate under this assumption like, oh, it's all out there, my FBI agent sees everything, like it is what it is, but remembering like, no, it's not what it is. And you can remove yourself at any time. So yeah, I actually really appreciate that about her, and I'm grateful for both Mavis Beacon in my childhood, but Renée L'Esperance in my adulthood.
I think my last question will be just about the look of the film, because I'm really like fascinated with how the film is, for one, giving a kind of model for a certain kind of like archival recovery of practice, but it's also going to be an archive of its moment in a really, it feels like a very intentional way. And I'm thinking about what the decisions were about how the digital space would be represented, what artists you would be around, and also the kind of thoughts around cinematography, the shooting of the piece, the fact that there's so much pink, there's so much shine, there's so much luster. I'm wondering about the kinds of decisions that were made around those aspects of the film.
I love this question. I mean, I'll talk about the Dust House, but also Olivia, if you want to talk about the conversation we had just around the aesthetic of what people think the internet looks like versus our internet.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Hackers. I watched it for the first time like a couple of weeks ago. But, you know, there's this idea of, you know, the like moody teenager in like a dark room, and it's like green and black and very, there's this kind of like gothic, is it gothic? I don't know, but you know,
Industrial.
like neo-matrixy kind of relationship that's like informed by like mostly like Hollywood sci-fi and yeah, or like very like Neuromancer, William Gibson. Like I feel like we have this Silicon Valley kind of like reads sci-fi and like all of these like epics that are supposed to be like cautionary tales. Like, don't build the Big Monster 5000, the novel. It's a 3-part novel. And like Elon Musk comes out with the Big Monster 5000, despite all the warnings. I feel like the kind of aesthetics of those kinds of internet stories so often of like, they forbear like that doom and disaster, even though our internet is like really lively, it's queer, it's bright, it's pink. There's a certain like fabulosity and excess and decorativeness that has always kind of been the internet that I grew up on, that Jazz was growing up on in terms of like living at this like I don't want to say cornucopia because it makes it sound like it's a basket that someone has collected and it's like not even so organized. It's like just this I feel like the use of montage really like helps in terms of like making it feel familiar. And then feel in terms of cinematography and the colors in the actual space.
At least in terms of like the cinematography and the shooting part of it, I think Jazz, you really had, and I would say this, like a very strong creative vision. I think had an opinion about framing, very intentional about what colors we were seeing. We spent like years actually perfecting our lighting game, especially when we could control it, because not a lot of times we could control the lighting. And the only times we could control it would be in the studio, so that's why like the studio really feels, or the headquarters really feels like, what is this world, and we found out, if we rig all the lights really high, we'll have like lighting everywhere, lighting everywhere will be perfect. And Jazz was always coming back like with like a little trinket here and there, like a lighting trinket, a little lamp, a little thing that completely kept on adding to the environment. And then for interviews, we would have these like little lights that we would bring as well to just, try to add a little depth and color. But we were also, a lot of it was good location scouting as well, and could do that.
Yeah, I think in terms of the workflow and like people are like, what's real, what's not, like it's hybrid for sure. The information and like the feeling, I'm like, no, what you feel is real. And that's like truly how it happened. Every now and then we change the order of things. Actually, the interviews that we go through, in terms of like the software tools in place, all of that is in sequential order. And yeah, it was kind of like preparing for an improv show in that we'd be like, okay, let's make sure the set is lit, we know what the people are wearing, and then we're just gonna roll for 3 to 6 hours and see what happens with breaks. And then for Yulin, anytime they'd be like, hey, can you do that again? I'd be like, I'm not an actor, okay? And then anytime I wanted to do it again, I'd be like, come on, let's get perfect. So like, I was constantly oscillating between like, what is too much or too little.
She'd be like, it's a documentary. And I was like, are you serious right now? No, say that shit again. We need it.
Yeah, we have a lot of footage. And then our editor's like, you don't need to film every time you come to the headquarters. And I was like, what if we do?
Oh my god, it was so rudimentary sometimes.
But we honestly, we used so much.
To the frame.
And then also, to the desktop point, my go-to line, my like Lady Gaga, 100 people in a room line for the press is that this film to me is very much like from somebody who watches true crime documentaries while scrolling on critical race theory TikTok. Like it's like both things in both extremes. And so for me, I did want to be in conversation, like true crime grosses me out and I actually can't watch it anymore now that I've made this movie. I'm like, whoa, so many choices, all of them are so unethical. So yeah, but initially I was like, okay, I do want it to play like a detective movie, also referencing a bunch of like noir films, which is not a genre that I ever felt interested or represented by, but it's so aesthetically rich. And so like the idea of like, oh, in noir we're playing with shadows, what if we play with colors, because we do want to see Black people's skin color. And yeah, the desktops, it was like we knew that we needed some device at some point to explain all of this information, and it was really important to me that we didn't just use a desktop anytime. It's like, Joe Abrams, let's just show their face, and that they were like kind of siloed. And so I think of the desktops as like these, they pop up in between chapters to kind of just be like, here's all what's going on, based on like, here's what our outfit.
Like a chorus.
A chorus, yeah, and it's really reflective of like, trying to make desktop realism, so it's like, trying to follow what it would look like if you were either a hacker or a spirit watching our screens. And yeah, also a way, like there were certain people that I really wanted to interview about this and we just couldn't. It was a pandemic, there was like, you can't go everywhere. And so the desktops also allowed me to cite my sources and be in conversation with people that I really admire in a way that wouldn't have been possible without them.
Well, do we have any questions from the audience, I'm wondering?
I have an interesting question. Like, you work on novelty during the pandemic, right? And I did notice that there was kind of like the George Floyd happened, and there was a lot of things happening, like it being like locked down, and it's really hard, right? So I want to know, since when you start like shooting, how many hours of investigation and footage you put into this documentary? And well, I think the little was not a lot, but it's a lot of work, so I really respect it. And I think, how do you did it? Like, you did it in person, you work like remotely, how was the process putting everything together? You were like putting the things together as you record, or you wait until you get the whole footage and you put like, you give the story?
A mix of all of that. It was, I mean, you know, it's like,
The project, we were filming for 2 years. The editor, John, who was the third editor who worked
Only 3 years.
We were filming 3 years. 2 years into the filming, he started to put together an assembly, so we were able to like be like, oh, this is missing. And then also like Olivia and I were, you know, working remotely. Like I think some of our first interactions.
Yeah, we're remote. Honestly, it was in
Remote.
yeah.
And then yeah, that's why you see me at the headquarters, because it's like it is a pandemic. I need an environment that I can control, where we can film around the clock. And then we were quarantining, constantly testing. Like it was an endeavor, and also as you see, it comes up in the film. Olivia lives in New York. I filmed the film in the Bay Area where I'm from. Just simply having her travel was a risk. We also like she said in the film, like we really lucked out. No one ever got COVID until Olivia got COVID, and then she had COVID, and that was a conversation too that we had throughout the editing process and with Neon, and they were really like, okay, like yeah, sure. Most folks aren't acknowledging that there's a pandemic happening, but if you think that's cool, and it's like, I'm really grateful they were like, yeah, keep that in. Because to me, you know, we're both experiencing all these things. I'm dealing with the physical space, and Olivia's also dealing with like medical racism, and that's not unrelated to what we're talking about here. So yeah, the edit process, how long, 2 years?
About 2 sessions. First session was for about 8 months, and the second session was also for about 6.5 months, 7 months.
Yeah, and we made a chronological version of the film, basically, where it was like, all right, cut all the good stuff, put it in order, and then I was like, I fucking hate it, this movie's trash, and then we made it weird.
In the investigation, like a lot of the like leads, a lot of the researching, I honestly don't know how we would quantify it because a lot of it was done remotely, and I know Jazz had her own late night spirals on the net, and I was on the computer a bit.
It's also this weird thing where like, yeah, we were pitching the project for a year, being like, we're gonna try to find her, but then I'd be like, Olivia, don't you dare try to find her till the cameras are rolling. And so like pretty much once Neon was on board, we're like, okay, now we have a million leads to look into, and yeah.
But also the film took a different course at some point because it was an investigation. We're trying to find Renee, we're trying to get the backstory of Mavis Beacon. And then it was, okay, Renee does not want to be found. Okay, what can we use in that refusal that Olivia mentions, and the fact that, okay, she actually has more agency in not being found, right? And so how do you pivot from that? And so that's why we ended up also back into the second session of the edit, actually find the story. At the end of it, it's a story of friendship, it's their story, it's a story of representation, Black women represented in technology, so it goes very meta, as opposed to just being a linear story of looking for this person and we find them. I personally like the fact that we don't find her because it gives her so much more power. I always say she's a quintessential Haitian woman, being very maroon, you know, and so I think that adds a lot more strength to the story itself.
And it's also like more like an ethical proposition. Like it's icky to go to someone and be like, hey, can you be the star of my documentary? I will not be the right model for your show. It's like my dreams will be crushed if you don't do this for me. You can say no if you want, but just know the film won't happen. Like, you know, like it's not actually consensual. It's like a very coercive ask. So the fact that we were like ready and that we had in like kind of in exchange, like allow ourselves to be the subject as we do a search and not like, yeah.
yeah, slowly the camera turns around
Exactly.
starts turning around back to y'all. I think for the third portion of the edit was also fun because we were very deep into the edit and we knew when we were like going to shoot, we were very precise with what we needed to do, and I think.
Yeah, like the beginning and the end, the map burning, that was on our pickup shoots. And also, I think so, we were closing out. Anyway, I love the map burning. Also, Olivia misheard me while we were shooting, and she's like, what, you said we're gonna light the map on fire? And then we did, and so, like, that's a perfect metaphor, too. Anyway, we don't know what reality is, and that's what this film is.
Next question.
Can y'all hear me?
Hey y'all, I'm Stella Ray. First of all, thank you so much. This creation has my brain moving in like a million wonderful, beautiful, incoherent, and revelatory cycles. So thank you so much. And like catching your DMs being like, can I get the viewing link so I can watch it again tomorrow? But I guess my question is about kind of off the tip of genre and also off of, just kind of your desire to not reveal and to accept the refusal of Renée, which I think is so powerful, and also the way you all welcome that reality in with such grace, I think I felt really empowered by, and it made me feel, even more curious about Black women's opacity, even more curious about Black women's boundaries. But I guess I want to ask about, also because y'all aren't like filmmakers previously to this moment, which I'm also really curious about, and what it means to be making this film in the context of documentary, when I feel like there was so much like conversation about like mistrust, like talking about you feeling gaslit, like all this harem rich white men saying, oh no, we don't know anything, like not bringing up the settlement, like Renee's not like lack of participation, like this kind of guise of like who can we trust and how can we trust, and like a singular truth or a concept of a singular truth and clarity being so in relation to colonialism and whiteness and a tool of whiteness and colonialism. And also me as an experimental filmmaker and a narrative filmmaker, like who admires documentary but is so skeptical and often views documentary as a participation and a perpetuation of colonial desires of discovery and assumption and clarity. And so I'm just curious about, like, in the midst of this, what is it to y'all to have a documentary film? And what is documentary to you? And if that is even something you considered, or, I mean, I'm sure you consider a whole bunch of stuff.
I love it. No, I'm like, I have a lot, I want to shout out, I have a background in collective organizing prior to this, and that's how Olivia and I met. And so, like, my collective co-founder, Sagay Tefessa, who we made Boo together, she talks often about how cameras were, similar to Olivia talking about the word submit on digital forms, like a form is a tool for capture for like anthropologists and colonizers to come in and like wrangle up all of the people of color and photograph them from every angle and side, and like even in my own schooling, like learning about like the terminology of how like what we talk about cameras, right? So it's like the master and the slave when you're talking about just like hooking up a flash, and it's like, whoa, why are we invoking this? And then the fact that, also cameras and film is not developed with our skin tones in mind. And so like already at the onset of like bringing out a camera, it's like, this is a violent thing. And then you talk about shooting someone, like, so I'm gonna go shoot a bunch of Black people? And like, that's crazy. And then also, I think for me, like, I'm so grateful because in working on Getty's film and getting to go to Haiti, and like, I've learned so much also from like Haitian people in Haiti around how they move with cameras, and like as someone with a street photography background, like having to learn how to ask for consent and also accept when people don't give you consent, and like wrap my head around just like, well, why wouldn't you want me to film this protest? And it's like, if you think about it, it's like, oh, because they're never going to get the images back. They're never going to get them back. And so often people are filmed in these ways, and then it's used for somebody else's financial gain. And so, like, to me, that's just like, you're setting the stage when you're making a film. Like, that is the onset. And then it's like, how do you circumvent that? And it's weird, because this is my dream. Like, this is my one big passion, is to make a movie and to premiere it at all these festivals. Like, this is my dream. And also, as I learned more about, like, it is Renée's, like, her protecting her image that continues to protect her peace. And also, like, yeah, my relationship with deepfakes has changed. So, like, in the beginning of the film, you see, like, we were playing with some, like, homegrown deepfakes. And then by the end of the movie, 4 or 5 years later, when computers could do that, it's like, this isn't cute anymore, this is terrifying. And I'm not into this, so we're not gonna deepfake anything, like, take away the deepfakes. And also, as a result of making this film, Olivia and I have given anybody and everybody our faces at every image, every angle, the way we walk, like, we have also served ourselves up on a platter. And so it is like so much easier after creating this film for our own images to be taken and manipulated. And then it's like, but the trade-off is also like, I got to choose how to represent myself. And then also learning and making an hour-and-a-half film when you film for 5 years, it's like, oh yeah, this isn't, even if I'm making it, like, that's not me, that's a version of me. That's it, like, but like, even so, you wouldn't know I have a partner of 12 years that I'm super involved with, or like, you don't see my house, or like, you don't meet Olivia's family. And so it's like, we also, at some point, as a maker, I had to realize, like, I have to flatten myself in order for this film to make sense and be followable. And then the brain, like, the brain fuck of being like, okay, whatever I choose, I'm doing for myself. But Olivia is trusting me at the beginning of her 20s, and whatever interaction she has with the making of this film will be her impression of like what it means to be a part of a film. And so, and also the trust of like, yeah, it's like, whoa, I have like her entire representation of like this really special part of her life in my hands, and like, Olivia, I hope you like the edit, and I'm like, bring it. And so like, to me, beyond the stress of representing myself, and even beyond the stress of representing Renée, it was the stress of being like, oh God, we are fighting the like, I don't know, sassy little sidekick who's a genius, like, tropes that a lot of people when we were pitching automatically like put.
They were like, she's Shuri from Black Panther.
Exactly. No! So also, I appreciate that Olivia like let me, and that's something we added in the back end, is like when she made the decision to be like, actually, pause on this whole college thing, maybe not for me. I'm like, oh, now this is like, now we're having fun because everybody is like, you're a genius, clearly, you're gonna go on and like go get a master's degree. And I thought like also the way she plays with her own representation, like she asked, she was like, I want to change the part of the edit where I go back to school. Like that's not, I ain't going out like that, and I'm so grateful.
That's why, so this brings me back to the documentary thing. I think after making this film, like, and editing it as well, like, I don't believe in documentaries. Like, there's no such thing.
There's no such thing as
There's no such thing as documentaries.
Shout out to
like,
Clinton and Hop.
films, and then, what was it? Like, no, not like a, like journalism, like a journalistic thing. Maybe that's.
Just when you decide to press record, when you cut, the angle you face.
When you edit, what you choose, like, what you were talking about, the genre of
Self-reflexive?
No. The true crime. When you think of true crime, like as an editor, and like when we were editing, it was just like, wow, we could either go this way, or that way. And it's like the nuances of what you choose to show, or even choose to let the people who you're filming say. There is so much power in that and how you choose to craft that. So I think we were very, very intentional with that as well.
Unless a documentary is a 360 camera that never calls cut, like I'm like, where you
there's no such thing.
There's no such thing as a doc.
Or just even like, and not to be like strict, but like in a sense it's like all, there's a little to which all documentaries are like personal documentaries, and like if you try to pretend that it's not, it's like you also have to acknowledge that you're using a supremacist tactic to pretend that it's not.
But also back to the camera as the Suleiman Cisse, this great Malian filmmaker, also my mentor. He says when we have this debate, he's like, no, you're tripping. Because for him, it's like the camera's not racist; it's the people behind the camera, but the technology of the camera. Like you can make that shit work, you know. And to just say, oh, it's the camera, then I would just like cut the slide.
Film stuff was not pretty black scale.
Tell that to him when he's making films in the 60s.
It's about like, but you can make arguments for AI, where it's like AI that's not problematic, it's the people who build it. And it's like, the camera's not problematic, and it's like, at what point, when something's been built so many times by the same hands, is it like ingrained into the system? But also, I'm a contrarian, but I'm really glad, shouts out to people like Stephanie Dinkins who are in the film, and Nema Guthrie, who I'll be speaking on the piano with too, who I think are like tapping in, and also like leaning in, and it's like part of my comfortability leaning out and maybe removing myself from the internet is because I know there are really smart Black folks who are connected that are doing this work and continuing to like move forward, so yeah.
I think at the end of the day, I think, being a filmmaker who makes both docs and narratives, it's really not about whether you're making a documentary or you're making a narrative. It's really about the kind of cinemascapes that we're trying to create and the cinemascapes that we're trying to project ourselves into, as opposed to being these perpetual others. And I think that's where the strength lies, is the story that you're telling, and with whom are you telling it, and how are you telling it. At the end of the day, it's a film. It gets projected in the same way. It solicits the same type of emotion. I mean, in this film particularly, there are moments I just want to cry, there are moments where I'm laughing. It does everything in the same way emotionally. So there is no real difference for me. And also to brand this film as a documentary, I think would be like a disservice to it. Because there is, like when you think of documentary, you're thinking like, oh my God, there's like the serious aspect of it, you're gonna learn something. But you do learn a lot here, right? But there's nothing stern or sort of like pedagogical about it, right? And so, it's pedagogical but fun. You know what I mean? And so there's the way that you go about telling the stories.
Like teaching a dog to do tricks.
Well, thank you again for this fascinating work, and for opening up so many questions from me and the audience. This is fantastic. Thank you all for coming out today, and enjoy the rest of the
Thank you, Blackstar. The film is being released on August 30th in New York, and then nationally on the 6th and the 13th of September. Support, go see it, tell your people, follow us, keep it in the movie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.